Welcome to the Absolute Dog Sex in a Squirrel podcast. I'm Lauren Langman. I'm one of the world's leading dog trainers, and it's my mission to help owners become their dog's top priority. In each episode, you'll discover how to gain trust and communicate with your dog like never before, creating unbreakable bonds that make you the most exciting part of their world. Okay, so Mel, I'm joined by obviously the wonderful Mel. Mel, you are, in fact, introduce yourself. What are you? What do you do on a day-to-day basis? You're a physio. To me, you're the brilliant Mel who I grab at shows and I go, Mel, help, feel this. And you're like, oh, dear Lord, stop panicking. What do you do for a living? What do you do day to day? How do you spend your days? I know you love what you do and you get to do that every day of the week. Tell us about it.
So I'm a small animal physio. So I don't treat large animals. I specialise purely in small animals, and pretty much 99% being dogs. I also do hydrotherapy as well. But I see that as all encompassing, really. So hydro physio, it is all integrated. I offer sort of an integrated service, land based, water based, the whole package. And That's really what I've been doing probably for the last 13 years now, really. Have my own clinic at home, my own underwater treadmill, um, and treat a variety of dogs, sports dogs, rehab cases, post-surgery, elderly dogs, and I love doing it all because it all brings something different.
And you're absolutely brilliant at it. Now, we were talking only the other day and it really blew my brain. I was like, oh my God, I think we need to do a podcast on this because I've been in dogs all my life. So I've sort of dreamt of the job that I do since I was probably about 2. Like I've always dreamt of doing what I do. And I feel like I know a lot about it. I feel like I'm an expert in my field. And yet you sometimes look down and you're like, oh my God, I'm just on the top of the iceberg here. Like this is just scary. I'm right at the tip. And that was one of those moments when we had this conversation. I was like, hang on a second, let's backtrack here. I think we've got trouble. And we were talking rest, we were talking recovery, we were talking rehab, we were talking how to plan a week out. And I think it's really important that we touch base on this. Now, today we're going to primarily focus on sports dogs because I think that is exactly what we were talking about when we obviously had the conversation. And it really, for me, it was almost a trigger, but a good trigger. It was like oh my God, what is a dog? So I was like quite shocked by it, to be honest. And at the same time, I always feel like I'm fairly knowledgeable, and yet what you were telling me was like throwing like what I understood to be true or correct. And yet I'm not saying that there's always like a one way and all the highways,
Mhm.
and you're very good at this. You're very good at like working with what's in front of you, but I do think it'd be really lovely to share with our listeners. So if you're up for that, that's what I'd love to do.
Yep.
Yeah, your game. So basically, let's start with the idea that you've got a week. Now, we've got a week. Now, we're talking agility. Agility is our sport, and we're going to talk a competition week. So, we're competing typically. Let's go with the weekend we've just had. So, we've just been in Scotland. We've been competing in Scotland. Mad, I know. It was a gorgeous weekend. There was loads of sun and fantastic. We competed on the Saturday and we competed on the Sunday. Now, how does our following week look in the ideal life of a dog? And I know there's sometimes the children to balance, the husband, the dinners, the work, the treadmill, all the other things. But with the best week in the world and the best will in the world, how does that ideal next week look? Because we finished competing on the Sunday. Let's say, like us, you're crazy enough to drive home and you're home on the Sunday night. We got home about midnight. And so
That was good going then.
it was good going, wasn't it? I thought the same. We got home about midnight. It might have been about 12:30, but it was pretty good. And all the dogs went out and we got straight back upstairs into bed, done, everyone asleep. And so it was good. And we got up the next morning and took Liza to school at 7. So it was definitely a rock and roll. But when we get back and we start our next day at 7 a.m., how does that look for a competition dog? How can we design our week? How can we make sure we're doing all the right things by them? And for me, this was my wake up because I was like, rock and roll, back to training or back to maybe a swim or maybe a water treadmill or all the other things. And you're like, hang on a second, Langman, get back here. And you kind of reeled me back in like a little fish. And I kind of went, oh. So yeah, tell us how it might look.
So I think it's really important that we think of things in particular like competition, and we can sort of look at as well what human athletes do, and that's sort of again sort of where a lot of sort of canine world as sort of, because the research is done in humans, and although yes, we've got a quadruped versus a biped, their physiological systems are very similar. So we've got that to work on. So it's really important. You think we've been through really high stresses at competition, and this weekend was like one of the planes taking off like 200 yards from the ring, landing, crow scarers. I mean, there was loads going off, and that's just the mental impact for the dogs as well. But physically, we had some grass rings, we had some sand rings, we had some hard sand, we had some softer, deeper sand where some of the larger dogs run through. Now, all those things are going to have different impacts on the body. Um, Obviously, running contacts now, everything is so quick. We've got skills at speed. There's massive inputs into the dog's body that we have to sort of balance out. So it's really important that those little traumas that the dog's body has gone through the competition, and this also does apply to some training as well, depending upon what training you're doing, that we give the body time to rebuild and recover, and allow it to become back to normal again. Those muscle fibers that have had microtrauma, they need good nutrition, they need good hydration, they need all these things to rebuild, and we need a quiet day the next day. So for me, that if it's a competing Saturday, Sunday, Monday is we do very little day.
I'm writing questions as we speak. I'm literally writing things. So I'm like, quick, I've already got questions, but keep going. So Monday is a quiet day. I think we should just explain the venue. The venue was close to an airport, wasn't it? So the venue was close to
Yes,
an airport, which is what you were saying is actually highly stressful for a lot of
yeah.
them. It's actually very, very stressful. The other thing,
even if they even if they don't actually show it, it's still massive, and it's different,
yeah,
very different. It's my first time of ever being there, so it was really new for me, but it's massively different to even a typical show environment. So and then you've got some shows where you've got four rings where it's really quiet and hardly anything, and then you've got like the likes of the really big shows that we have here in the UK. I mean, even Wallingford was 16 rings, you know.
easy.
It's just crazy. There's so much going on. So yeah, so Monday would be a lighter week.
So you said a rest day. Now, I think it's really important we consider what rest looks like for different people and different animals and different dogs and people's perspective. And I'm going to give you a perspective here because I remember probably about 7 or 8 years ago, maybe longer, having a client's dog spayed, and the vet said, just go straight back to sort of lead work exercise and normal exercise within like 5 days. And the woman had the dog out like doing canicross and like running with the dog because in her mind that was lead work. And I think that's really important to acknowledge, like, what is the perspective of rest? So what does rest look like, Mel, for you?
So rest for me will include things like having a quiet environment, having
Writing them down,
probably
by the way.
yeah. I apologise for the noise because my dog has just decided to now chew the ear that I gave her when we started this, which she didn't want, but now she's now doing it. So
Obviously, is it now?
absolutely, it had to be now, didn't it?
Something
And
to chew would be good. Something to chew.
yes, so something to chew. Again, nutritional input as well, because the body needs good protein in order to repair itself. So that's really important. Whatever format the nutrition takes is fine, but nutrition is really important. Again, hydration as well, because without those things, the body's got no fuel to repair itself. So it needs the fuel in order to sort of facilitate those. So yeah, something like along, you know, chew or a fill Kong or something like that, or a fill bone is quite nice. For me, it might be a gentle lead walk as well. So
Yeah,
it's important to have movement, and rest shouldn't be just sleep in your bed all day and don't do anything,
yeah,
because um, particularly the sport that we're talking about, mainly agility, you know, you get, I mean, if we know it, if we've gone and done a lot of exercise, we get lactic acid build up, and it's really important that we try and clear that lactic acid from the body, because that's what gives that delayed onset muscle soreness that you feel, you know, that achy feeling that you when you've done a lot of hard work.
yeah,
And we can mitigate that by using some, I mean, I would use some electrotherapy treatments to help with that, but actually movement is also key as well to that. So you know, light gentle lead walk is good. some, lots of sniffs. It might be on whatever you choose on a long line if you've got a dog that will just mooch, but if you've got a dog that just wants to race, it might be a shorter lead. But it's about keeping things quite calm, quiet, and just allow everything to settle back down and recover, basically, both sort of mentally and physically.
So loads of good things that you mentioned there. One of the things that I was going to ask you about was I've got quite a nice sized garden. Is that appropriate or is that not appropriate when we think about rest time? Because I think you gave some quite nice clarifications because it may or may not be depending on how the dog behaves in the garden. So what would you say in terms of a garden?
Yeah, so if the dog's going out and mooching in the garden, I think what I said to you was if they're going to be bouncing, vertical bouncing because they want to see something going on, or they're going to race up and down because they want to see what, or hear something, that's not rest. If they go out in the garden, they have a lay in the sun, they're going to mooch around, having a sniff, maybe some scatter feeding or something like that, to just allow them to mentally decompress as well as physically keep moving to allow the body to recover is good. But certainly I wouldn't be canicrossing. I wouldn't be going out with where the dogs are racing, have multiple dogs racing around together. So I wouldn't have mine out in the garden where they're running around playing chase and everything else like that. They'd go out on their own. My spaniel does like to vertically bounce if she's quite aroused, so I would be making sure that I would not allow those things to happen, but still allow movement, allow calmness, allow her to decompress from the weekend.
Yeah, so great stuff. Now, if you're thinking about having, for example, a treatment, because one of the things I often think is, oh, I've got to fit in a treatment for the dogs, and often the day after the treatment, the dogs are then rested as well. So they have treatment one day, and then the next day they have a calm day or a lower impact day. Would a Monday be a good day to have a treatment? So if they were going to have like a treatment from someone like you as a physio, or would that be better on a Tuesday or a Wednesday or a Thursday or a Friday? Like, where do you put that in?
Yeah, so well, and again, it depends what you've got going on the following weekend as well. Because again, this was something else we talked about. If I've got no show on the following weekend, then my week might extend slightly. So I might do some light skills training on the Tuesday, and then maybe Wednesday, slightly more intense. Then Thursday, I might have again a quiet day. I might do some land-based work. Friday, I might train again, and then Saturday, I might treadmill. But if I've got, so like we talking about the professionals like we did, it's trying to tailor the time of day as well. So for me, if you've got things you want to do, say you want to do some skills training and you've got a professional to see that same day, then do the professional later on in the day, and whatever else you want to do, whether that be treadmill, skills work, fitness work, in the morning. Because if you see the professional in the morning, it knocks the rest of your day out, because the dog should have sort of some quiet, calm recovery time after that treatment to allow the best work from that treatment. Otherwise, you're treating in one respect, but then you're sort of negating a little bit by overdoing other things afterwards.
Yeah, it makes complete sense. I'm still taking myself some notes. I'm loving it. And so the other thing you talked about was like potentially like damaged muscle fibers and then building those muscle fibers, and actually damage being just part of working them, and like those minor like micro traumas, I think you called them. But those types of things. Like, tell me more about that.
Well, in order to build muscle and to strengthen a muscle, we have to traumatize it in a way as well. So, in order to allow it to grow and get better, we add some trauma by basically whether we're doing some treadmill work, we might be pushing, we might do some incline. Again, it depends on the dog and what stage they're at. Actually, to physically push them to fatigue, because that's when we then grow muscle. But what's important is what follows that session is time for that muscle to recover and repair itself. Excuse me, to become stronger. If we don't allow it time to recover and repair itself to become stronger, and we then tax that muscle and cause more micro trauma the second day, then we're going to make the small micro traumas gradually accumulate and become a bigger one, and then we're more susceptible to injury. That's when we get like overloading, overtraining, and more injuries will probably happen as a result of it. So it's a massive task, because you found out when we were talking about it,
Oh, it
to
blew my brain.
balance out the week with competition, get the skills training that you want in, get some treadmill work, get a professional involved, everything. is really difficult.
And then compete the next weekend, because
Yes.
typically my summer goes from probably middle of April through to middle of October, pretty much every weekend. In a nutshell, you might get the odd weekend off, and I'm now looking, thinking, well, actually, I'm going to a competition this weekend. And I'm like, maybe I shouldn't go to that competition. So you start to like question which ones you should go to, and maybe start to be a little bit more selective, which again I think is good. I don't think that's a bad thing.
Yep.
I think it's just a bit of a wake up to it that you hadn't really woken up to before. And then there's that moment of feeling like you might be letting your pair down, or your friend down, or the person you're running a dog for down, or you're like, oh, should I do that? Should I not do that? Because there's that guilty feeling, or even the fact that you feel like you should be somewhere. So there's that I should be here, and because you've always been there. So
Yeah.
there's those feelings as well. So if we were to go ahead and plan our perfect week, Mel, how might that look? And I'm going to give you an example and a scenario of, purely selfishly here, because this is a scenario. So we've just been to Scotland. We're going to Nottingham at the weekend. We've got 5 days now. Well, less than, because we're already partway in. But let's go from the Monday. We want to fit in. I'm going to give you the list. This is the wish list. We want to fit in a professional at some point. And the professional's probably going to be body work, because I don't have anyone that works in the treadmill like you do, other than obviously our own team in house, which is a learning progress space for all of us. Matt is great, isn't he, in the treadmill? Matt,
He is.
he's employable, right, Mel?
Absolutely, yes.
Keep him.
You're not.
What am I like in the treadmill? How fast do I want to do it all?
So fast.
You're like, slow down, Lauren. Don't push so hard. And I'm like, go, 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 go. So yeah, definitely I'm not a treadmill girl. I'm not a treadmill girl. Jamie and Matt, fantastic treadmill girls and boys. Um, and so Mel, when we're thinking about that week, I want to fit in the professional. I want to fit in a session on the treadmill with Matt or with Jamie.
Mhm.
I would like to fit in some land base. I would like to fit in some training. And
I might need a pen for all of this.
I know, I know. This is what we're gonna have to. I'm setting you home here. I would also love to fit in some walking on lead and off lead, because I quite like to do a bit of both. Um, I think that's my wish list. So the professional, the treadmill.
Yep.
Oh, if there was time, a swim as well. But this is where I struggle. And obviously, we are leaving on the Friday. I'm gonna have to get a pen too. My phone's just died. We are leaving as well on the Friday. So we leave on the Friday. So Friday is typically a travel day for us. So yeah, we've got our professional, we've got a land base, we've got our water treadmill, we've got our swim, we've got our and obviously enrichment and garden times happening anyway. So those are all happening anyway. But where do we start when it comes to designing that week? Like, how does that week look?
Okay. So the dogs we're talking about, are they competing on Saturday and
Yeah,
Sunday, or just
yeah.
Saturday or just Sunday?
I've
Because
got
that has an impact as well.
I've
So,
got two that are competing both days, and I've got one that is only going to do one class on Sunday.
okay. So the one that's doing the one on the Sunday, that gives you a little bit longer because you don't have to think about backtracking. Because so for me, excuse me, I would backtrack from the weekend that we're working towards and go, right, so we need to come backwards from that. So the one that's on the Sunday, you could probably do like a treadmill session on the Thursday
Mhm.
morning, professional Thursday afternoon, which would leave Friday, Saturday free for acclimatization from that activity. Um, so that would be Thursday, and then I would typically look at Tuesday, Wednesdays being my training, like agility training days.
Okay.
Tuesday probably a lighter session. So because they've had Monday as a rest day, back on a Tuesday, possibly lighter. So it might be some very simple skills just on one jump or two jumps. And then Wednesday, slightly a higher intensity of, so it might be, you might do then maybe some running dog walks, dog walks into weaves, because then you're looking at massive acceleration to decel to turning. So it's yeah, it's really, really challenging on the body. So that would then be the Wednesday for that type of thing. So a Tuesday, Wednesday would be my activities.
Yeah.
I would probably do the training in the morning and then have land-based sessions and lead walks in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Um, and Friday would be again a quiet day, but then most of the time we're traveling. But
Yeah.
something else I did want to talk about was traveling. I think sometimes we don't appreciate how big an impact actually traveling has on our dogs, even when they're in the vehicle that they know, with everything's calm and quiet. There have been so much thought into human athletes when they travel to major competitions, actually, that traveling 2 to 3 days before the competition isn't enough to for peak performance. And again, that's sort of talking for peak performance.
Yeah.
And when we're talking about general weekend to weekend through the agility year, I mean, there was a time where we couldn't do the amount of shows that we have now. It has become
Grown
more
exponentially.
challenging for us to manage
Mm.
because of how much there is available to us. And so we do have to be a little bit selective. And no matter what we do, our dogs cannot be at their peak performance from mid-April to October. It's just not possible. They will physically not be able to manage it. So we have to actually manage it a little bit for them, and almost like, what are our goals? And the difficulty is when you have, like, you've had champ this weekend, you've got champ next weekend, you've got champ the weekend after, you've got champ the weekend after that. So we've got like 4 weekends on the trot of
Got
championship
singles,
shows.
Olympia, novice. Like there's a lot, isn't there? There's a lot that
Yeah,
you get to do, and it is like I feel some days like a kid in a sweet shop. Like I'm like, there's so many things that I want, and yet you also know that you probably can't have the like jelly worms and the fizzy strawberries and the fried eggs and the chocolate covered. You know what? That's sometimes what you're trying to do. You're trying to go in there and try and have it all. And actually, you do need to be a little bit more selective and say, actually, for this dog's 7 or 8 or 9, or this dog's like did have a, I don't know, an injury last year, and I want to be aware of that, or this dog's still young and still building up. There's don't I don't get many times where I think this dog is just flipping perfect. Like you don't get many times. There is nothing wrong. Everything is kosher. Life is good. Let's stay like this. There's often something anyway. There's a niggle, or there's something that you're working on. I think that's just the nature of a sports dog and a finely tuned eye, because you're looking.
absolutely. And the more driven, the more the sport pushes for speed, um, the more those things are going to happen, because we're looking to have our athletes performing, and they are, highly driven and have less self-preservation, and they are just all about the go, they're all about performing, and they're not going to think about what they're doing to their bodies, and you're very good at, if they're eliminated and you're not going to get anything more from it, taking them out. Why carry on? Why risk anything more than what you need to?
And that's a really interesting one, Mel, because a lot of times people have come up to me and gone, "Why did you take her out?" And I'm like, as if I'm being cruel, as if I'm being a bad person. And I'm like, no, 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 she's having a great time, and I'm very happy with her. There's nothing I'm unhappy with. I'll even do it in like cham rings, like you've seen me. I do it in a
Yeah,
cham ring. I don't care which ring I'm in. I'll complete on something I think the dog's successful at, seesaw for example, and off I go. And for me that is okay, but I think there's this expectation of the world to say this is the way it should be done, and there's almost like an etiquette that it might be considered as rude to not stay there. But I feel like it's my dog that I want to be polite to and kind to, and I don't really mind the etiquette of the judge. I always say thank you. I always say I
mm,
appreciate the course, but I think you're right. There's only so many jumps in a dog, right? And under that
absolutely.
do any more.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think sometimes there's a saying that just because we can doesn't mean we should.
Mm.
So just because we can run a whole course doesn't mean we should if we're not going to achieve something we want out of it. Or they've been eliminated in a champ class and they're 9. Why would you carry on if you're not going to, you know, want to preserve your dog for the next run? And that's just, I think it's something that we really do need to pay more attention to, and it is becoming much more aware about those things. But there are, like you say, there are still people going, why did you do that? And I'm thinking, well, why wouldn't you do that? That just makes complete sense. If a dog has a fall off a dog walk, I must admit, and I apologise if anyone's, I have it makes me worry so much when they put them back over it, when they've fallen off from the middle plank and it's badly. I'm like, the dogs are full of adrenaline. They are not going to feel the impact of the fall that they've just had. It will be, and I'm sure we can all as human beings know,
48 hours
we
later,
fall,
48
yeah,
hours
when
later.
we've fallen over, yeah, it'll be the next day, but it'll also be the second day that you will probably feel really sore. I
Yeah.
recently fell over. I went over a tunnel, and it was 3 to 4 days before I actually felt not sore,
And
and that's because
the other thing is you'll sit down and for me, I always know, like I always dread, and I know this probably sounds OCD, but I always dread getting them out of the vehicle after I've come home or after I've been on a big training session, because I know, although I've warmed them up and cooled them down and done all the right things, I know if there's going to be any unsoundness, I'll often see it there, where they've had like a period of rest
yeah,
after a period of which is why I actually really like doing training days at home here, because we've got a lot of space to warm them up, cool them down, and they don't have to go in a crate afterwards. My dogs can wander around the house or wherever I'm going to put them, after work, yard, garden, wherever they're going to go. Because I do think sometimes it's that period of immediate rest after that you'll see them get up with a level of stiffness. But you're right, it's not often, if it's not going to be in that moment, they're still painful 3 or 4 days later. But you didn't know it in that moment, and what you just did was put them over that dog walk again.
yeah. And even if you can't visibly see that they're painful, they will be muscle soreness. So if you know that they've had a fall, a slip, or they've twisted in a tunnel, then I would be accounting for that and going, right, we are having a really quiet 3 to 4 days here to make sure. I mean, obviously, I do it myself for my own dogs, but or getting somebody in to have a feel to do some work if they need it on them to help them get through it. Use electrotherapy as need be to help boost that recovery process.
I'm
Because
right.
if we don't
I'm on notes again.
yeah, if we don't recognize that, and then we go and do some training, or and training days are probably more physically
Massive.
demanding than competition. Most, like I say, goes that you have, you're looking at sort of 5 to 6 minutes of intensive work. And I mean, you know that I am, if I've gone on train day, if I think I've had enough, I like no more.
Yeah.
Even if I haven't had my time, I'm like, nope, that's it, we're done. Um, because I want to make sure that I've got them for the next session or the next week or the next month. Um,
Or let's go with the next 15 years, right? And I think
yeah,
that's important, because I know you without either of us getting upset, you lost an older dog and she looked fantastic right to the last day. And I think the same with mine. I think the same, like Poppy, till the day I lost her, looked fit and healthy. She looked fit and healthy. And I think for me that's such a privilege and a pleasure to have a dog who still looks great as they reach their senior years.
yeah,
And I know that's
definitely.
something you take huge pride in, how good your dog looks.
Yeah,
um, and I don't know about you, but I always think about mileage in a dog. Like I actually think my dogs are quite low mileage. And I think of like my vehicles. My van is quite high mileage. My dog is quite low mileage. And that's
yeah,
probably the way I'd like to keep it, Mel, that I want my dog
definitely.
low mileage. So now one thing we didn't mention
Mm,
was in our plan for the week, and I'm going to run through this plan for the week because there really isn't enough time. And I know that this is what we're going to come out with in a minute, is there isn't enough time. But one of the things that you said I need to add into my program, which I struggle on, is sprint training. Now, I struggle for a few reasons on sprint training or off leash work, because I'm paranoid. I have a very hyper busy dog who I love her off lead. I don't have any recall struggles or problems like that. But I feel like I need to protect her from the world, because she will spring off banks. Or you've been on our lane. Bowland Lane is beautiful. You're walking along the lane and you think the lane is really safe. She could only be on the lane, and you're going to see if a car's coming, because it's a one way, it's a one track road. And I've got great recall. However, you'd hope. And however, she's on the top of the bank, she's leaping across the bank, she's jumping across. There's like, she's just nuts. And I'm like, I need to take full responsibility for you, because you take none for yourself. She's like owning a lemming. I feel like a lemming. I feel like she has a strong will to die, and I feel like she would jump off. Like, and I feel like there's a massive responsibility with that. Now, then the second one, I was walking across yesterday, and our pony got out of the field only a few weeks ago, and he galloped across the yard. He undid his own gate and then galloped, and I know you saw the video, and then galloped across. But he left a few divots, and so since then I haven't wanted to let them in that field, because I need to get them filled,
yeah,
and then rolled. And I find myself becoming very paranoid about the ground they're on and also the ability to sprint. Like I want them to sprint, but I'm also careful that they're sports dogs and that carpus and or carpal injuries or sort of slight sprains, you know how quick they happen or how quickly they happen. You know how long they take to recover. What would be your recommendations on sprinting and off leash work? When would that be best to happen? Because we've come back off a show on a Sunday. Is it a good thing to do it maybe Sunday night, Monday morning, Monday daytime? Is it better to do it when we're doing our Wednesday training day? Is it better to not do it, to do it on the other option I've got is maybe a flexi lead? And I know that flexi leads aren't liked, but they give her a bit more range without me having a on lead or off lead. So they kind of give me a bridge in a safe space. What would be your recommendations on off leash? And like I said, it's not about controlling her, it's about safe off leash without
Yeah, yeah, stopping her from being crazy and
traumatizing.
hurting herself. Yeah. I mean, we sort of talked about, I think the flexi lead is a good option because it gives more than just a short lead, but prevents her from being on the top of the bank and leaping off because you can manage it a little bit easier. Um, but we talked about using the arena for sprinting as well, so you then don't need to worry so much about what the ground undulations are like, and like you say about the little divots that could be in the field because of said horse galloping across the field. um, so but and it's and sprint work doesn't have to be um, with a turn, because we talked about just doing it straight. So it could be somebody you can either, I often do it because I'm on my own so much for my training, I don't have anybody else, so I actually have and I hate to say I do have a really good weight with my spaniel.
You do
um
a really good weight. I watch you and I'm like, oh my God, I love her weight. Like my dog is so different on a weight. She's like stalky little collie, whereas yours is like princess. Phoenix is perfect. And I'm like, oh my God, look at her. So Mel does have a great weight. In fact, Mel's teaching the next course. It's going to be like 10 days to start her weights. Go on, Mel. And she's going to speak to me.
so yeah, so I use her weight and I will leave her in a weight, and I don't have an indoor arena, but you can use your indoor arena. So you can either get somebody to restrain who can restrain appropriately, and we talk about not like restraining around the neck. um, and I then go out and I recall her, and this is after she's warmed up as well. So it's a straight line, it's a straight sprint to me. And I'm running and I then slow myself down. So we haven't got like a sprint to a dead stop, because I don't want that. I don't want her sprinting to a dead stop. I just, at that moment in time, I'm targeting just the acceleration and the sustainability of that as well. Because I think that's something that we do need to, because agility is a sport that borders the 30-second to 45-second sort of window, I suppose. Not many of our top dogs do go up to 45, but you can go up to sort of that you're looking at that time period. We do sort of cross the anaerobic aerobic border, and we do need to make sure that we cover sort of all of those aspects. Plus also we could do a run in one ring. You never know, you might have to do another, say you've got a champ run and then you've got a qualifier. Not that it's ideal, not that you really want to do it, and in an ideal world you would actually have time to have a break, calm down, if the class is big enough. But if that wasn't a possibility, worst case scenario, you have to go from one ring to another ring and do two runs back to back. Or training days, you will, some of the training days, like I say, they're actually higher intensity than a competition, so we need to prepare them for that. So we need them to be able to sprint, have a short break, but then sprint again. So we need to build that into our plan, and I would probably include that within the, probably on the Wednesday. And I would probably do some agility training first. I then might have like a short break and then do some sprint work, and then I might maybe do a land-based session at the end of that.
So we've got Wednesday being training, some
So
sport.
Wednesday's like your peak day, really. So you're creating like this curve effect. So the peak of your week is the middle of the week. You've got to build up to it, and then you've got to tailor off to it to the weekend. So whatever you've done on the Wednesday, the dog's body has got time to get over that and recover before they then are asked to compete on the weekend.
So that's really good. So we've got Mondays our sort of rest day, maybe a lead walk, maybe a little bit of like downtime, chew time, and obviously any of our therapies that we might be using. We could be adding in our electrotherapies there potentially,
Yeah.
and a few other days. Our Tuesday is lighter training, some lead work, and And anything else we might add in there?
You could do some land-based work as well, so sort of all the exercises that we talk about doing to sort of maintain range of motion, to maintain core strength, to maintain and build. I mean, look how much Skittles glutes have built up since August last year.
Massive, massive. So
Huge.
Cavaletti, confidence circuits on top of all of the land-based exercise we're doing with her structured stands and her balance movement. And actually, it's not free running that's done that, because she doesn't get a lot of free running. Not because I don't want to, more because I fear for her life at times. Free running.
I think that's probably the biggest misconception, is that in order to build muscle, we have to do more off lead, we have to do more running. But actually, it isn't. It's the slow, controlled recruiting the right muscles, activating the right muscles, having the right exercises in place, and having them performed in the right way. I remember when we first talked a lot, there was we talked about using more stable surfaces. I don't think Jamie very rarely uses unstable surfaces anymore, and look at what she's achieved with the dogs.
Absolutely. Yeah. Way less prop and
Yeah.
more like we were talking about the other day, fit without kit. Like she's really fit
Yes,
without a lot
absolutely.
of
That's
kit.
yeah.
And we were talking about actually a lot of people underestimating the value of no kit. Like it's almost like naked training. Like you don't want it, you want to strip back all the like fun, fluffy, inflatable type world, because there is that massive world for, I mean, at the end of the day, it sells, doesn't it? It sells really well because there's a lot of products there you can buy and they look great. Like they do look great. The fitness room looks
Yeah.
great. But actually the amount we use those compared to the real base exercise is very little, and particularly thinking on the stand, the hamstrings, the tail, the structure, and her weight shift, those are probably your real go-to's everywhere before you do anything.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.